What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Eric Wilson. Today, joined by my co-host, Collin Alcaves. Today, we're going to be discussing Brennan Othmann. He's a name that's been thrown around a lot this season by Rangers fans, even though he's never once played in a New York Rangers game in the regular season, at least. He's played a few preseason games. But a lot of fans really want to see Othmann get called up. There's certainly a lot of reasons why the Rangers could and maybe should do it. But at the same time, there's also some reasons why they shouldn't and maybe should stay away for a little bit. So we're going to be diving into those pros and cons of the potential Othmann call-up. But before we do, make sure you guys like, subscribe, ring that bell so you don't miss a notification. If you're watching us on Apple or Spotify, be sure to give us a 5-star review. Leave your thoughts down on a potential Othmann call-up down in the comment section below. And be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms at Fireside Rangers on both Instagram and X for daily Rangers updates. But before we really get into the whole discussion, Collin, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm excited to be back on. Love talking about the Rangers at all times. Excited to watch them play the Ducks tonight. And excited for the future and then potentially calling this kid up if that's what the Rangers deem fit.
I agree. I think tonight is a must win against the Ducks. I think this is going to be uploaded tomorrow morning, though. So let's go Rangers. We got such a good win last night. Knock on wood, of course. That's going to come back to bite me. But Brennan Othmann, he's the subject of today's episode. I want to start off by discussing a pro. One reason why the Rangers should call up Brennan Othmann, and it's the simple fact that they are in desperate need of a first-line right winger. Heading into the year when the rumors being thrown around of going, should the Rangers call up Othmann? Should they call up Cooley? They ended up going with Cooley, and the main reason for that was because they needed like a third line bottom six depth piece. Whereas Othmann is the type of player who, if he was in the bottom six, his potential would be a little bit wasted. You saw what happened with Lafreniere, you saw what happened with Kakko, and you saw what happened with Hedl, and the Rangers made the smart decision by not doing it again with Othmann. He needs a top six role, and at the start of the season, Kaapo Kakko is up on that first line. Second line is still Alexi Lafreniere, and the Rangers have switched with multiple different guys up there. Brodzinski's had some time on the first line. Blake Wheeler has had some time on the first line, but none of them seem to be clicking. And I think when you look at that first line right now, right, I believe the most recent matchup, Wheeler is up on that first line. It's just not working. Zibanejad has started to heat up, but he had a slow start to the season. Kreider had a great start to the season, but he's been ice cold in recent games. So it just seems like there hasn't been a perfect trio yet. And I feel like that's exactly what the Rangers are lacking. And given Brennan Othmann is a natural left winger, but we saw Lafreniere was able to transition over to the right side during training camp this season. Othmann was also practicing on the right side in case of a potential call-up. So we know that it's possible, and given it's not guaranteed, but it's definitely an option the Rangers could try. Another big thing you got to factor in is the money. If the Rangers do want to go out and get a new winger for that first line, they can't exactly afford it, especially with Kakko being out and then their Hedl being out. They might need to go out and get another center if Hedl's out for too long. But that's my opinion on the first line thing. I think if you're going to look for a replacement there on that line to help Kreider and to help Zibanejad just find their game and their chemistry once again and form that solid trio, it might be better to look within the organization. But that's my take on the first line. Collin, I'll let you take over and share your thoughts.
I think you make some valid points. I think it's always easiest to remedy holes in the lineup by looking within the organization and seeing what's there. For me, I think that he's just still a little too young. I don't want to rush him. I want to take our time with him. This is his first season in the AHL because there were some stipulations with his old contract that he couldn't or something like that. And I liked what I saw from him in the preseason. He was promising, but I'm not, jeopardizing his development when we can just move Barclay Goodrow and go and get an established NHL or a guy who plays at this level every single day and knows what to expect from it, as opposed to throwing a rookie into the fire. And I get he'd be getting the top 6 minutes, and that is very enticing. But I still want to wait and give him at least 1 year in as close to the NHL as he can get in the AHL. Had he played in the AHL prior, I'd be more willing and, more interested in experimenting with him possibly in the NHL. But just due to how quick the turnover will be, where he gets not even a half a season in the AHL and he's already in the NHL, I think that's just too quick for him. I think he still needs to gain a little bit of experience and a little bit of confidence and establish himself as a consistent and solid AHLer before he moves up to that next level. Because as we've discussed in past episodes, guys who have absolutely torn up the AHL have not translated to the NHL. I mean, we saw it with Julian Gauthier. He was an AHL god, and he's doing well now with the Islanders, but he was never really given the opportunity as well. But even still, like, he wasn't really turning heads. He was great at drawing penalties, but that was about it, and he was really fast. But, like, it doesn't always translate from one to the other, and I think that's a big thing to pay attention to. So, you know, until he's, like, top-tier AHL guy for a little bit, and he's showing brilliance and he's making it so that we can't keep him down, I'm not going to rush to bring him up. But that's my take on at least that the first line hole.
Yeah, and I like you're right, and that is the con that I had planned to discuss is he needs a little bit more development. But just when you're looking at the first line and the options the Rangers have available, it's like, yeah, the simple answer on paper is just trade away Gaudreau and clear up that however many millions they can, because it's going to be really hard to find a team that's willing to take on Gaudreau's entire contract without like the Rangers retaining at least a significant portion of it. And you might have to sweeten the deal with a pretty high draft pick as well. So it's not that it'd be impossible. It's definitely possible. But to me, just in that aspect, for when you're looking at someone to fill in on that offensive role, to me, Othmann makes sense. But you make extremely good points about his development and playing the AHL, which is why I'm going to transition into the first and really the only con to a potential Othmann call-up. I feel like it's the only thing that fans have like holding back their decision on whether they want the Rangers to do it or not. But it's a massive one. It's that Brennan Othmann, this is his first season playing professional hockey. And, you know, he's succeeded in pretty much every level of hockey that he's played in. I mean, you look back to last year in the OHL, split between the Firebirds and the Petes. He had 67 points in 56 games, so over a point per game player there in the OHL. He goes to the World Juniors for Canada under 20, 6 points in 7 games, almost a point per game there. And so far this season in the AHL, 19 points in 23 games, so almost a point per game player in the AHL as well, which is it's all great signs. But you have to consider the fact that he's only had 23 games playing professional hockey. He's still getting used to it, and there's definitely a lot of his game that needs to be improved. He's scoring a lot of points, and he's helping the offense out a lot, especially on the power play down there in Hartford. But at the same time, you look at his play and just the critiques, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done defensively. He seems like he's like all the way there offensively and would surely be a good force on that first line for the Rangers. But outside of that, he's not really going to do whole lot. He needs to do a lot of work on his defensive abilities, his forechecking, his back checking, all the checking that goes on, physicality as well. He's not the biggest player. I mean, he's not small either. You know, he's not Matt Zuccarello, but at the same time, he's not really going to be like Will Cooley having 73 hits in 27 games so far through the season. So if the Rangers were looking for someone who was just solely there to score points, then yeah, maybe Brennan Othmann could be labeled as ready to go in the NHL. But for a team like the Rangers, who are looking to be Stanley Cup contenders, we'll see if they get out of the slump that they're in, which I'm sure that they will. But they're going to need someone who is already fully developed, kind of like you said, a regular NHL player who does this every single game and is ready to go and is prepared for a potential playoff atmosphere. So I know that's my opinion on it. Collin, I know you already kind of just broke down the whole thing about how he's not ready. Was there anything else, or should I transition onwards?
I'll say I do want to touch on the fact I'm not like anti-Othmann. I think he's going to be a very good player down the line. I just, after watching the Rangers rush a lot of prospects, and while it worked out for some, like we're pretty solid, obviously at developing goalie, but also at developing defensemen. I feel like forwards have lacked, and then players have gone elsewhere and succeeded, such as guys like JT Miller and Anthony Duclair, and guys that we were really quick to bring up and then really quick to move on from. I don't want to see the same thing happen to him. I know Kakko is getting a lot of hate right now, and he probably should have started in the HL. And you look at a guy like Quentin Byfield, and that's like the blueprint of what teams should do. They should not be rushing their prospect pools. The Kings had spots for Byfield. He could have played it in a top 6 role, but there was no reason to put him in a top 6 role on a team that was constantly losing. They kept him in the AHL, and this year he's been a stud for them. And I know Lafreniere, was coming along earlier on, but now he's hit a little bit of a wall. even though Vincent Trocheck and Artemi Panarin continue to chug along, continue putting up points. So it's like, where's the disconnect there? And it's a little alarming, and they're also young, and I just hate seeing all the hate getting directed their way when they are so young and they should have had more time in the minors. And so that's why I think I'm so pro him staying in the minors, just because I don't want him to go through the same fate and dealing with the tough market that is New York and the very impatient market that is New York, with the New York fans constantly asking, what have you done for me lately? I don't want him to have to deal with all of that right away. I want him to, come in even overconfident. I want him to exceed expectations and even blow out his own expectations in the AHL and really, set himself as a force. That way, when he's ready to come up, he knows that he's ready, and it's not just the team that's banking on him, but he's banking on himself.
Yeah, and just looking at his stats right now, all like those 19 points in 23 games down in Hartford, most of those points that he has scored with the Wolfpack have come on the power play. So he too is struggling, even offensively at 5v5, which is a problem that the Rangers already kind of deal with. I know that they've gotten a lot better over recent games, but if it's still any minute problem that the Rangers have, like, I feel like calling Othmann up at this very moment would kind of be just adding fuel to the fire that's already been going on. And then you add in his defensive troubles. And when the Rangers have a huge defensive problem right now, it makes a very large case of why the Rangers should stay away. And in my opinion, I'm not I can't read the future, but I don't think the Rangers would. They've had every single opportunity possible to call up Othmann this season with the amount of injuries that's been going on. But Kakko, Hedel, Goudreau was out for a little bit as well. Who knows what's going on with Jimmy Vesey? I don't know if he's projected to play tonight. I guess when this video comes out tomorrow, we'll have known if he played or not. But if the Rangers wanted to call up Othmann, they would have by now. The only way that I realistically see it happening is if there's a major change, let's say and I'm not even going to finish that sentence because I'm the king of jinxing the New York Rangers right now. And I don't want to say that anything bad could potentially happen where the Rangers would need to call up Othmann. But I don't know. As far as I know, it is a little bit of a stretch right now. But there are still some valid points on why the Rangers could at least consider it, or at least consider it moving forward in later into the season, or maybe to start next season. And the next thing that I want to talk about is one of those pros on why a potential call-up would be helpful is that second power play unit, right? When I say that most of Othmann's points come on the power play, he knows what he's doing on the power play. And who doesn't know what they're doing is the Rangers' second power play unit, because when I see the first unit go out there for the Rangers and I'm seeing Zibanejad, Fox, Kreider, Trocheck, Panarin, they make magic happen. They're amazing. But the problem is when you have that first unit so star-studded, it kind of leaves the second unit out to dry. Now, I know that Laviolette's been switching up that second power play unit around a little bit, but it's when you have Hedel and you have Kakko out, there's really not much there. You have, I think it's Gustafsson and Lafreniere are both on it, but then outside of that, you have Johnny Brodzinski, Will Cooley, a lot of guys who are good players, but not really the type of player where you would expect to see them managing a power play unit. So when I look at a guy like Othmann, who is young, crafty, is proven to have success on special teams, I feel like he would be a great addition to that second power play unit and definitely help out the guys like Gustafsson and Lafreniere, whoever is on that second power play line. I'll pull it up right now, but I'm curious to hear your opinion on possibly putting Othmann on a power play unit for the Rangers.
I think it's definitely intriguing, especially with the stat that you threw out there before, with most of his points being on the power play. But I don't know that one player is going to turn a whole unit around. If they've been struggling, together, then I don't think.
I've also got to consider when Kakko and Hedel come back from injury, because I'm assuming Hedel is going to be back before Kakko. So just envision that as well.
It's a matter of how fast he can develop chemistry, but even still, they don't get that much time. And I get that power play one is God status, but there's such a steep drop off in skill level there. So
I started laughing because I looked at the line. The second power play unit as of right now is Will Cooley, Blake Wheeler, Johnny Brodzinski, Eric Gustafsson, and Alexi Lafreniere.
There's a steep decline in skill from that first to the second unit. And I like those players individually, and I like what the roles that they play, some of them. But that's night and day. That
It's
first
not
line
what you'd
is
expect on, like, I love Will Cooley. I just wrote an article about him today, about on EmpireSportsMedia.com, about why Cooley has been like the most underrated addition to the team this year. Because you have the guys like Gustafson and Quick to take all the spotlight, but Will Cooley's doing work out there. He plays great defense. He's blocking shots. He's making hits, making big plays, and he knows how to score when the Rangers need him to. But on the power play, I don't know. I'll let you continue.
I think he's more of that net front presence that you need. And I don't think that he's a terrible option. I just think that there's better options out there. As I said, I like a lot of those players, but for a second power play unit, that's not exactly who I'd envision out there. And obviously we do have a couple injuries, but I like who you take out the weakest link on that power play. Sure. Take out Wheeler. I knew you were going to say that. Then you put in Othmann. Is it really going to change all that much? A guy who doesn't have any experience at the NHL level outside of preseason when he's playing other prospects. Like, I don't know that he's going to turn the tide. And even still, as you mentioned before, his defense isn't all there. So, like, if he messes up, are we going to get scored on shorthanded? And then outside of just the power play, you have the rest of the game, and we're not always going to be on the power play. So I think that he needs to, iron out the rest of his game. But I think it's definitely an intriguing possibility down the line to have him on that second unit and potentially the first once he grows up a little bit. But like I said, I don't think that he's going to turn the tide single-handedly. But you never know. I mean, if he does get the opportunity, maybe he takes it and runs with it, and maybe he gets somehow promoted to that first unit. There's no way of knowing what could happen. So we're speaking purely in hypotheticals here. But I don't think that he could come in and reinvent that second unit like you'd hope. But I think you might give it a little bit of a boost. But I don't think that it would be like reinventing the wheel out here.
I'm just looking at it where, like, because you're right, like one player won't make a significant difference, but when you look at that combo right there, I knew it was bad, but I didn't realize it was that bad until I just pulled it up. And then, like I said earlier, even when Hedl comes back, I'd be a lot more comfortable with Cooley, Hedl, Othmann, Gustafson, and Lafreniere. That sounds like a decent second power play right there, especially for a team like the Rangers who still rely on a lot of their offensive production from the power play. I know we talk about the night and day difference between Gerard Gallant and Peter Laviolette, which Laviolette has been a great coach and he's improved a lot of things on the team. But the one thing that still does struggle a little bit is 5v5 offensive production. And sure, the Rangers look a lot better this season, but they're still a team that relies a lot on that power play. And if that first unit ever starts to slow down or they start to go through a little bit of a slump, I'd feel a lot more comfortable having faith in my second power play unit that doesn't consist of Blake Wheeler on it. But I don't know, because you are right that one player won't make the difference. It's just kind of predicting in the future when players come back from injury, how they're going to perform. And that's stuff like that. It's impossible to speculate on. But the last thing that I just want to touch upon before it wraps up, because there are some very valid points on why the Rangers could call up Othmann, but the big one, the experience, is kind of shying us away from it a lot. So it's his first season in professional hockey. At what point do you at least think the Rangers would call him up? And at what point do you think they should? Because in my opinion, I would say as soon as next season. Blake Wheeler's contract is going to expire. Let him play out the full season in the AHL. If he has a good training camp next year and he can prove to transition to the right side perfectly fine, boom, right side. You have first line of Kreider, Zibanejad, Othmann, Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere, then Cooley, Hedl, Kako, and then just whatever the fourth line looks like at that point. Because I'd say after this full season and another offseason, Othmann should be ready to go. I
mean, when should they call him up and when will they call him up? That was the question, correct? I don't think you'll see any of Othmann this season. I think it would take something crazy. And I think with the spot that the Rangers are in now, and being that they're doing so well and that they're in a playoff spot and whatnot, and like they're looking to make a deep run, I can't see them bringing up this like total rookie midway through the season. Like at least Cooley started with the team. He got a couple of games last season. He's been in the AHL marinating. So he has that, as we mentioned, experience. Whereas Othmann, as again we mentioned before, he has no experience at any. Obviously, he's played competitive hockey, but not to the level that the AHL is. And the AHL isn't even like it's as close as you can get to the NHL, but the NHL is just a whole nother level. And so, I don't see them, throwing him into the fire, as I mentioned before, this year, just given the stakes and everything. I think that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody who really doesn't have the experience necessary. I could see potentially if he has like a fantastic rest of the year on a really good training camp next year, him potentially playing with the team and maybe making that first line spot. But I don't know that we're done seeing Kako on that first line. I know a lot of fans are going to shake their heads and roll their eyes at this one. And I don't know if it's a bottom six role. I'm not interested in bringing Othmann up because we've seen what that does, and it does absolutely nothing. It takes first line minutes and a lot of time. I mean, you look at a guy like Pavel Buchnevich. He's like one of my go-tos when it comes to things like this. He was struggling at the NHL level, constantly getting scratched in and out of the lineup. You give him the first line minutes, and then he's an absolute dog. And then, unfortunately, we don't have the money to keep him. But like he's tearing it up in St. Louis as a consistent NHLer, a guy who was at one point a third round pick and a long shot to make the NHL. So I think it's just consistency and persistency of keeping them at the highest level that they can be in terms of the lineup, and not putting them down in that third and fourth line role because they need the minutes and they need the time, they need the power play time. And you look at guys like Timmy Stützle and Jack Hughes and Quentin Byfield, and they're getting all of that, and they're all succeeding. And you look at guys like Laf and Kako, and they've got none of that, up until the season. And, I think the results speak for themselves. So unless, you're willing to guarantee that Othmann is going to get all of that, I have no interest in bringing him up personally. And I could see them holding him out, letting him finish the season in the AHL, letting him do all of next season in the AHL, and maybe his third season finally giving him that chance, if they don't like what they see or if they can't find a spot for him in this lineup. And the tough part is, a lot of the core is locked up, but a lot of the core, obviously, is the important parts of the lineup is the top six. You got pretty much the left wing and the center, the first two lines are set. They're set in stone. Occasionally, we might see Hedl back in that role, but I doubt it with the way the Trocek's playing. So you're not going to see him on the left wing. And the right wing is very fluent, but I feel like Laf is locking up that second line role. So then I guess it's a mad dash at first, and the cap is going to go up. So if they don't go and get a guy to fill that role, then maybe, but I doubt that they leave that spot filled or unfilled, especially with the cap going up and contracts being moved around and things like that this offseason, like past the season. I think that there's so many things that could happen that the chances of him playing next season are, again, slim, unless they try to rush him and put him in the bottom six, which would just not be good for his development, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you on the point where I don't think we're going to see Brennan Othmann at all this NHL season. And I think that's the right choice. It's the smart choice by the Rangers. Let him develop. There's no need to call him up right now. Let things happen naturally. But in my opinion, I'm going to make a bold take here. Three things need to happen. It's how Othmann performs for the rest of the season. He's had a good start to the season, but we still need to see how the rest of it goes. The Rangers need to figure out what they're doing with their free agents, because Blake Wheeler is a free agent at the end of this season. I believe Kaapo Kakko also is a free agent at the end of this season. So who knows? There might not be a lot of money going around at the end of the year. And lastly, there needs to be a top six spot available. Like you said, wasted potential down in the bottom six. But if all three of those things happen, if he's playing good, if there's money and there's room, bold take, Brennan Othmann will make his New York Ranger debut in the season opener of next season. And I think those are the three things that would create the perfect storm for it to happen. But again, time will tell. It is all just possibility at this point. Like the title says, potential call up. There's definitely good reasons to consider it, good reasons to stay away from it. But that about wraps up this discussion on Brennan Othmann. I'm curious to know how you guys feel about this subject. Do you think the Rangers should call up Brennan Othmann, or should they stray away and let him develop for at least the remainder of the season down in the AHL? But thank you to everyone for tuning in. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, ring that bell so you don't miss a notification. If you're watching us on Apple or Spotify, be sure to give us a 5-star review. And be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms at Fireside Rangers on both Instagram and X. Once again, thank you all I think we're taking a little like 1 or 2 day break because I'm going out of town with Anthony. So we'll be back in a few days to cover more of the Rangers. The daily content will continue on the social media, though. So be sure to check that out. Thank you once again. Have a good one. And
let's go Rangers.